Try and look here. Here.
Yeah,
I'll be right back. Ready?
Hello and welcome to our weekly Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube live this week. I'm Liana. I'm joined by Neama Rahmani and Human, last minute appearance. So thanks for joining. Thank you for joining. We have lots of questions. A lot's been happening. Of course, we're talking about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp. What else is happening in the world, right? This is what all eyes on that. So let's start with your thoughts. And then, like I said earlier, I have a bunch of questions that I've kind of been following through on social media that I think we want you to answer.
Obviously, a huge day yesterday. Amber Heard finished her cross-examination. Witnesses are continuing in her case in chief, but I really want to talk about Amber Heard, Camille, and Elaine, right? And we're talking about Depp's lawyer and Heard's lawyer because a lot of folks on social media are saying Camille Vasquez did a good job, which she did. I'm giving her credit. But I think it was more that Elaine was absolutely terrible. And there's so many bad strategic legal decisions that have been made in this case by Heard's team. But I really want to talk about the rules of evidence. I mean, this is law student 101. Everyone takes evidence. If you don't take it in your first year, you're certainly taking it in your second year, right? And you're talking about an attorney that has almost, 40 years of experience?
Compared to Camille, who only has like 10, I think.
Yeah, and she can't overcome even basic foundation objections, hearsay objections, leading objections, speculation. I mean, literally, this is something you teach in basic trial skills. I mean, it was, and I do TV almost every day. I've covered trials for 20 years. It was probably one of the worst performances that I've ever seen, at least from an evidentiary perspective that I saw yesterday. But what did you guys think?
It was brutal to watch. I mean, I was secondhand embarrassed for her because I was like, oh God. And like, you could tell that she was getting flustered and her everything was just off, you know, and it was just very difficult to watch.
I agree 100%. What was interesting to me was all of her objections when Camille was asking questions were overruled. Camille's objections were all sustained because, like you said, this is direct or redirect. She doesn't know she can't ask leading questions. At some point she said, oh, look, I'm trying. And this is an attorney with 4 years of
Someone
experience.
actually said that Eric Daniel, her I'm trying is pretty terrible optics.
That was terrible. And
again, I'm not trying to take away from the really good performance by Depp's attorney, but you know, the example I like to give is a football game. Sometimes, you know, your offense comes and they blow the team out of the water, but sometimes the other team turns the ball over 6 times, and that's exactly what happened yesterday, in my opinion.
And like, I still think Camille, though, we need to give her a little bit more credit, right? Because she was on her A game. She scored really good points, and then when she was making those objections, she was making them timely. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she was kind of getting under her skin.
Oh, no question.
That's why it was kind
but whose skin? Heard's skin, or because
I think both.
Well, I think Heard did okay. Look, so reportedly she left before the jury did. I think she was frustrated with her lawyer. There's some rumors out there on social media that she was upset. But I think all in all, given the facts that she had, let's just kind of go through the different areas. Here were, in my opinion, the 3 huge areas of inquiry. The first is the abuse, right? The pictures and video. I think Heard dug herself a hole by, at best, exaggerating, right? You can't say, I thought Johnny Depp was going to kill me, and then you're showing pictures that show bruising, but is in no way consistent with attempted murder, right? So that's one. The second kind of area, and I want to hear your thoughts on this as well, are the drug and alcohol abuse. I think that Depp's team spent too much time on that. I don't think they scored any points there because Johnny himself admitted freely that he was a drug addict and had abused almost every drug. So I think that was a mistake by the Depp team. And the third area that I thought that Depp's team did well on was the $7 million, the divorce settlement, right? And you see Amber Heard trying to say, well, no, I pledged the money, even though I said I donated it. I thought that was an area that they did pretty well on. But what are your thoughts on like the substance of the cross-examination?
I agree. I think number one, they did kill it with the pledge versus donating, because she went out, she told everybody she donated the money, and then tried to backtrack from it. And that's just, I mean, you've talked about this before too. That's committing perjury almost. So that's something people may look into. The other thing you talked about was whether or not, the drug, and I thought the same thing, and I do think they focus on it too much, but I think they anticipated what the other witnesses were going to come in and say, that Amber Heard does not do drugs, that she's against all drugs. And I looked at the itinerary
for the wedding,
right?
Yeah.
And then it says dinner and then drugs.
Yeah.
And then she talked about how she takes ecstasy and that she does other things. But then the witnesses today and like yesterday were saying, oh, they've never seen her do any drugs. She doesn't do drugs at all. So I think maybe that's why they were focusing on it.
Maybe it's a credibility play, but I mean, I think everyone's going to agree, even the most hardcore Johnny Depp fans, that he doesn't party, right? He doesn't like that, but he certainly abuses drugs, and when he does, he ends up trashing, his condo, his penthouse, hotel rooms, Airbnbs, whatever the case may be.
I think that Depp's attorneys, did a very, very good job establishing that at the very least, Amber Heard has this weird, almost delusional state of what she lives in, right? So everything that is thrown her way, she almost comes off to me as someone who's constantly saying, don't believe anyone else, even though there's photos and there's people testifying, believe me, right? Because she constantly says, well, that's not how I would characterize it. And I think she overdid that. Every question was like, well, I disagree. And I don't think she did any favors to herself, to her team with her responses. But in terms of, the $7 million, 100%, I think she lost a ton of credibility there, because you can't say a pledge and a donation is synonymous. That's just, it makes no sense. And so she insisted that it was, and I think that kind of shows the jury that this woman has a propensity for either exaggerating or twisting facts. And I think they did a phenomenal job driving that point.
Yeah, I think the pledge versus donation distinction wasn't a particularly good one. But sometimes you just gotta come clean and just say, listen, this is something I was embarrassed. I plan to do this. I plan to keep acting, and I had money problems. And I did pledge to do it. And I planned to do it, but when I had these legal bills because my ex-husband sued me, I had to use the money that I was going to give the ACLU and Children's Hospital and pay these lawyers. I think that would have come across a little bit more credible. Again, same thing with her injuries. I mean, she could have said, listen, he struck me. Remember, she only needs to prove one instance of domestic violence. You don't have to be super dramatic and exaggerate and say, listen, I'm not trying to in any way downplay domestic violence or say that it's acceptable in any way, but you don't need to get that far to win the case. There's a very easy path to victory. Don't overextend yourself. Don't lose credibility, because it's not necessary to win the case. Now, you might want to do this for PR reasons. Maybe if she had come out and said, he hit me, and it's what we would call a minor assault, like a misdemeanor assault, right? Maybe that's not the way she wants to win. She wants to show the world that Johnny Depp beat the living expletive out of her, right? And maybe that's what she has to prove from a PR perspective. But from a case perspective, it was unnecessary, in my opinion.
So I actually want to also talk about the knife that was presented. But before we do that, we have a commenter, Vanessa Aslani. She's saying, anyone catch the, quote, blood red? I know Johnny's team did. Did you catch that? I'm not really sure what that's all about. So if you want to maybe clarify, we can ask Neema his thoughts. But in terms of, again, exaggerating, right? I think it was very effective when they brought out not a picture, but the actual knife that was gifted to Johnny Depp by Amber Heard, right? So if you're claiming that you were scared for your life, at the same time you're gifting your abuser this butcher knife, right? That has an engraving that I think it said till death do us part, something along those lines. So I thought that was also a very effective move on Depp's part.
And also there was some significance in that picture with the knife sitting on the bed, because she said the damages to the bench was from Johnny Depp's boots, and then the knife was just sitting like on top of the bed. And I think Johnny Depp's legal team did a good job as trying to at least portray that she's trying to stage all these pictures, right? With the Coke, just perfect 4 lines. Right. No one's ever touched it, with the ashtray, with those things. I thought those were some points. One other thing you talked about, and I agree 100%, is when we go to trial, we always say, own the bad facts. Amber Heard's team did not do that. They don't do that. They refuse to do it. And I think, especially in terms of the donation, that's number one thing they should have done. The same thing with her hitting Johnny Depp. They could have said it was in self-defense, but she says, I never did it. I've never hit him. And then they had the audio recordings.
Yeah,
right?
they're the recordings, the deposition testimony. Listen, just come out and say it was a mutually violent relationship. You know, it was toxic. It was volatile. I did hit him. He hit me. This was like everyone knows someone in a terrible relationship, right? A couple who's constantly fighting. Again, Amber Heard wins the legal case if they're beating each other up.
Right.
So why do you got to come out and say that I've never hit him when there's testimony and it's clear that y'all were violent towards one another?
What do you guys think about the TMZ slip up? I don't know. It sounded like a slip up to me where she said, I didn't notify anyone. And then they showed deposition footage where she says TMZ was notified. And so, again, that goes to her credibility. But what were your thoughts? Do you think that was effective?
Well, I mean, there's leaks all the time. So we're here in LA, and Human, Liana, we all know. So we're a couple of blocks from where Johnny Depp and Amber Heard lived, and a few blocks from the courthouse. And we'll file documents with Stanley Mosque right here down the street, and TMZ will get the conformed copies before we do. I mean, they got sources at the courthouse. So does it really matter if her team leaked it or someone at TMZ got? TMZ is going to get the information here in LA before anyone. So again, it's one of those things, just kind of own it, or look and just say, look, obviously everyone knows Amber Heard is a PR team. She's fired the PR team. Johnny's got an army of publicists. We got publicists here at the firm.
Right.
So, just own it and say, listen, everyone thinks that Johnny Depp's this saint, I wanted to get my story out, so that's why I had my publicist or my lawyer talk to the media.
But
That's
it's that flat out denial of no. And it's like, is her team not aware that these recordings exist, right? And it's this constant contradiction. No, it didn't happen. Yes, it happened. I think that's where she's losing so many points with people and the jury, I would imagine.
All right, so then the question is, can Amber Heard be a liar and lie about all these things and still be the victim of domestic violence? And then the answer is probably yes, but she's going to need a lot more than her testimony. And this is what I'm going to talk about today in YouTube video. She needs the independent witnesses. Right. I don't think she's going to win with her testimony alone. So we're starting to see some of those witnesses, but Amber's path to victory is not through her own statements, because her testimony was at best mediocre, but more likely very poor.
It did not help her.
Yeah.
So a couple of comments. Christina, Human's wife, is tuning in. She's saying, did anyone else catch the fact that most of the photos she took inside include this mug with some white and red on it? And in the video, she's seen drinking out of that same mug. It looks staged in most photos, in my opinion. I actually agree. And that's another point I wanted to make, is that a lot of these photos look staged. And when she claims or talks about these alleged crazy beatings and whatnot, there's no photos of those things, but everything else that she takes photos of just looks staged. Like Johnny's sleeping. She claims he's drunk or he's on drugs and he's just passed out. But there's never any physical evidence of any of these crazy, moments that she described. So what are your thoughts about the staging potential of these photos?
I agree. I mean, at the very least, again, it just doesn't look good, because I have seen that coffee mug or the tea mug. It's reappeared in a lot of the photos, and she's always sending a text to her best friend saying, "Oh, this is my morning," or "This is what I'm."
Right. That was the one with the cocaine.
Yeah. So it just doesn't look good. Again, I don't know whether it's truthful or it's not, but I think Johnny Depp's team did a great job at creating that perception.
I think it's the one area I think that just Depp's team wasted time. Look, whether the cocaine was lined up, does anyone really doubt that Johnny Depp does a lot of cocaine and has done every drug? I mean, he himself said it. So, I just think, if I were the jurors, I'm like, why are we talking about the cocaine being lined up?
I actually took it as they're trying to prove that she's staging and setting him up. Not so much that he did it or is that his or not, but she's setting him up, and so everything else that she says.
She's drugging him and
No. She is preparing to kind of maybe make these claims.
Well, then, what I would say in argument is, in closing, is I didn't bring this case. Johnny Depp's the one that sued. I wasn't planning to line up exhibits to sue my ex-husband. In fact, I walked away and I wanted nothing to do with him. He's the one that brought this battle. So don't come at me and say I was trying to set him up. I don't think that's a really good argument by Depp's team, and it's one of the few kind of criticisms I have.
That's interesting, because I don't know if you guys caught this yesterday about the letter regarding arbitration. I didn't know about it. I think it was impeachment evidence that came in, and then I had Amber read it, and Camille asked, well, you threw the first shots, right? Or you fired first. So apparently there was a letter, I don't know if it was a petition to open arbitration or a letter regarding defamation that Amber Heard's team had sent to Johnny Depp before they filed the lawsuit. That said, we will either like they opened an arbitration proceeding about defamation, or it was like a cease and desist letter. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of going back, right? No question, Amber Heard, let's say, started it, right? She files for the restraining order in 2016. She files for divorce. There's a settlement agreement, right? There's a mutual release walk away. Depp pays the $7 million. They agree not to defame each other. They kind of pull back the statements. You know, again, what I would argue if I were Heard's team, again, listen. Look, it's one thing to kind of send letters back and forth and keep my name out of your mouth type things. The lawyers do all sorts of lawyer things. But to file a full-on lawsuit, you know, for hundreds of millions of people to watch, that's a whole different story altogether. Like, we never wanted any money from Johnny Depp. That's at least what I would argue if I were Heard's team.
So Vanessa Aslani is clarifying, and that's actually another point I wanted to talk about. And I guess the blood red that she mentioned is actually the cover-up quote of the injury, right? So that came up, the fact that, and I guess let's talk about these photographs, right? Because she claims these violent beatings or alleges these beatings, and then we see photographs of her at the Met Gala. We see photographs of her on what's his name, the talk show,
the James Corden
show, and we see no bruising, no swelling, right? I mean, I assume you have a broken nose, your face would be swollen. So let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that. And I call this the ice and makeup defense, right?
Yeah.
So Heard is saying that, look, I was injured, I was bruised, nose broken, but the swelling went down with ice and I covered it with makeup. Again, in my humble opinion, that's not going to fly. Right? In the UK, she had a makeup artist. She talked about this ENT. You got to bring those witnesses in. Your statements that was all covered up in makeup, that is not a good defense, in my opinion. You better bring those makeup artists. You're Amber Heard. You got stylists, you got hair, you got makeup, you got a team of people. Bring those people in.
And we talked about this yesterday. Like, you went to the Met Gala and nobody saw you coming in with all sorts of like black and blue eyes and had to cover that up. Like, it's just it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, is the ENT on a witness list? Because her attorney did a terrible job trying to lay foundation for her, trying to talk to her about it, and try to bring it out that she was actually, she saw somebody, she was diagnosed with stuff. She has problem breathing apparently, so did a terrible time. I would agree with you 100%. If you have that, he should be on the witness list.
Yeah. And
I should call her. But the other thing is, and I agree with you, her testimony regarding the ice and makeup was not good. I think the witnesses now, the independent, well, they're not independent, but they're her friends, they're doing a better job at portraying that, saying we saw her with the black eye, we saw her with these things, and I remember her covering it up. And I think one of them was actually crying as she was describing her injuries. So I think that adds more value than the testimony that she gave.
Yeah, no question.
So with that said, let me ask you this, Neema, because I think a lot of people, at least from what I've seen on YouTube, were wondering, right? So most of Johnny Depp's witnesses, except for like I think one, have either appeared in person or live. Hers are almost exclusively, at least so far, other than the doctor, are all pre-recorded. So number one, the question was, is this a bad look for her? And number two, how are their statements admissible? Because then they can't redirect because they're pre-recorded. So talk to us.
Yeah.
TikTok asked that too. The bad look that most of her witnesses are pre-recorded, including one from
Yeah, that was a
2019.
popular question.
Yeah.
So let's answer the question. The reason they're pre-recorded is this all happened here in LA, and Virginia can't compel attendance by subpoena for an out-of-state witness. But if a witness is unavailable, their deposition testimony can be introduced in lieu of live testimony. So that's from kind of a rule of civil procedure perspective why we're seeing videotape testimony. Look, me, frankly, for Heard's team, I think it's much better to have the deposition testimony because the objections have already been ruled on, and you're not going to look like a fool in front of the jurors and the rest of the world. So, but yeah, I mean, Depp had some other videotape depositions. All the LAPD officers were videotaped. Some of the security guards, the one in the car that was like driving off famously. So, I mean, that's really why. Look, you want to have live witnesses there, no question. That's going to be a much, much better look. Again, if you can handle the basic objections, But
And the jury typically is more attentive when somebody's in
Engaged.
person.
You know, I mean, look, when you're sitting there watching somebody being asked, I could imagine, I could see a situation where you kind of doze off, maybe you're not supposed to, but I think it's less engaging with the jury when they're stuck watching footage.
of course, yeah. I mean, we got a lot of students, and I'm sure we got questions. Look, when you have a professor actually teaching you, that's very different than streaming some YouTube video, right?
Right.
What is your opinion about Elaine's redirect?
Elaine's redirect.
Terrible.
I think it was terrible from the start, and I think she was frustrated with Amber Heard. Amber Heard was, and so in the end, I think she didn't wrap up. She just gave up. She was like, "Okay, I'm done. No more questions." And so I think the whole thing was just terrible.
Yeah, painful. Probably one of the most painful things I've ever seen in my 20 years as a lawyer.
Yeah. And I
It's
wasn't
terrible.
even sure where she was going with it, right? I mean, with redirect, you just kind of want to pinpoint just a few key points that you want your witness to elaborate maybe or talk about. And I think I wasn't even sure where she was going with the redirect the entire time. Like, what are you trying to establish that hasn't already been said?
What she wanted to do was to rehabilitate, right? She couldn't do that, and I still don't understand how she had an outline, she didn't have her questions written.
That's
She
what I'm
didn't know
saying,
what,
like, where are
you know,
going with
leading,
it? Mhm.
lay foundation. It was terrible.
Another question. So do you guys believe he's sued to get this public, or do you believe he's suing and he'll actually win?
For me, I think it was just a PR move beyond anything sort of legal. Number one, he's suing her for 50 mil. She's not even worth that much. He doesn't, I assume, need that money. You know, I think for him, this was a great PR move to get his story out there. He got to say what he had to say. I mean, he's already won. He's won long ago, if you ask me, in terms of the court of public opinion. And I think that's what this was all about.
Yeah, no question. This was about the court of public opinion. That's why Johnny Depp wanted cameras in the courtroom and Amber Heard didn't, right? I mean, Depp's back was against the wall. He was canceled, and especially when it comes to, you know, Hollywood studios that are really kind of family friendly like Disney, they weren't going to touch him. So what did he have to lose? He's pissed off at his ex-wife for what he believes is running her mouth and lying. Obviously, she thinks that she's telling the truth. So he had nothing to lose, and he's threw this Hail Mary, and it turns out that it's going to work. Frankly,
Yeah.
I didn't think it would after the disaster of the UK. You normally don't want to throw good money after bad and file a second lawsuit when you've lost so badly, but clearly the results so far have been very different here in the United States.
Has been very effective at like changing that public perception.
And-
I still think he's going to lose 9 out of 10 times on this trial.
Yeah, I have a question for you. Okay, so we're lawyers. We talk about the law. A lot of folks on social media don't care about the law, but do you think, assuming there's no jury nullification, right? Do you think if the jurors are actually following the jury instructions, and I want to talk about a couple important parts of the jury instructions, clear and convincing evidence, right? That's the standard. It's not preponderance, right? Higher standard. You got to show actual malice, right? It's hard to win defamation cases. Amber Heard needs to just prove one out of more than a dozen alleged incidents of domestic violence. If the jurors actually follow the instructions, do you think Johnny Depp wins?
No.
What about you?
I quite frankly, I don't think he'll win. That's why I'm saying, for me personally, this whole thing the entire time was just a PR move, a way to get, I mean, how much more effective is this than if he were to, let's say, pen something or release a statement? I mean, this way the world is invested. I mean, look, this is what we've been talking about for weeks, and everyone got to hear his testimony, got to hear the support that he has. And honestly, she not only torpedoed his career, she's now doing the same to her own.
Yeah.
And so,
I think she's so unlikable. It's gonna be hard for her to be acting. I got another question. Okay, strategery, as I like to call it, during closing arguments. If you're Johnny Depp's lawyer, you just get up there and say, you know what? Thank you for listening to our story. We just wanted the truth to come out. All we're asking is that you award $1, just $1. You know, because do you think Depp's gonna actually try to enforce a judgment against her, or if he gets the money, he's probably gonna donate it to charity anyway? I think that's gonna be kind of a genius move.
I was thinking, and I would agree with that 100%. I don't know about $1. Maybe to reduce it, to ask for less, they buy a lot of points like that.
yeah, I agree.
We have a few more questions from our viewers, about 5 minutes left. Would you agree that Depp's attorney Vasquez, while very good, went too far at points with argumentative questions, while other times missing some key follow-up questions?
Yeah, I think she could have done. I know to criticize that.
How dare you, Neama
Oh my!
Rahmani.
I'm hesitant to say anything. Look, I mean, Elaine was so bad that it's hard to criticize Camille. Again, I think she spent too much time on certain areas, and she also had Amber on the ropes at certain times. You got to kind of go for that kill shot, And I think there's a couple blown opportunities, but I still think overall her performance was an A, and as far as Camille goes, and Elaine,
especially with her
F, D minus,
F,
F,
for sure.
F minus.
Yeah.
So we try to get to all the comments. Obviously, I try to shout out everybody's spouses. So mine is finally tuning in. So this is what he's saying, and we actually spoke about this in the morning. Disney, for example, dropped Johnny Depp immediately. They, without even giving it a second thought. Warner Brothers, on the other hand, they filmed Aquaman 2. It's questionable whether she's in it. There's people are saying she's in it for 10 minutes, whatever.
No.
So he's saying, do you guys think the Hollywood studios that dropped him will now look like the villain because the public is in such big support of Johnny Depp?
I think Disney is going to be all right.
Yeah.
I think they'll be okay. If they can deal with the DeSantis in Florida, and Johnny Depp is
Johnny Depp is just a walk in the park.
Yeah.
I think what this is doing though is kind of like changing that perception again and changing the narrative, because maybe in the future they're not going to be so fast to drop people, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like the approach that Netflix took with Chappelle.
Yeah.
And everybody has different opinions about that, but they just released a memo on it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, they pushed the release for Aquaman 2. Again, thanks, Hope, for letting me know. I had no idea. We follow superhero movies very closely. They pushed the release, obviously pending the outcome of the trial. So I assume they figure out whether they're taking her out entirely or not. So I agree. I think at the very least, this maybe shows studios to not be so quick. But I see why Disney did it. I mean, they just were like, we're not touching this guy. We don't even want to know, right? And it sucks because really he's made them billions and billions of dollars. So to kind of, release them like that, I think it's messed up.
Lots of questions on TikTok. In your opinion, have you seen any perjury so far in this case?
For Amber Heard, I think the statement that she donated was perjury. Will she be prosecuted? Little to no chance. Perjury prosecutions or charges are very rare. I don't think it's going to happen, much less someone that is an alleged victim of domestic violence. You don't want to be going around prosecuting women, even if the allegations are false, because you don't want to have a chilling effect when it comes to one of the most underreported crimes in the country.
So we actually have a really good question. I'm sorry, on Instagram for you, Neema. Any grounds, this is from Bite Size Babe. Any grounds for incompetent counsel claims for Amber against her counsel?
Seriously, if this were a criminal case, you can get that conviction tossed. The good old ineffective assistance of a counsel argument, one of the best arguments on appeal for a criminal defendant that had no other basis. Really hard to prove that in a civil case. It's just someone with 40 years of experience. But yeah, that was ineffective and it was incompetent yesterday. No question.
Okay, so I think we're just about, and so she says, I was thinking the same. So thank you for asking all of your questions. We thank all of you guys on all 3 platforms for joining us. We'll be following this very closely as we have the past few weeks. Amber Heard's sister was on the stand today, and so I think there's going to be a lot to talk about.
Yeah, just to give a couple things to look for. Obviously, doing Wednesday Night Court TV, 6 o'clock. I'm going to be summarizing the day's testimony, so check me out. 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to be shooting 2 YouTube videos today. Noah's going to get them edited, and this is what to watch for. What Elaine did wrong in terms of the objections. We're going to be going through the different types of objections and how you as a law student can overcome those objections. And the strategic legal mistakes that Heard's team has made. If they did things differently, what should they have done? And would it possibly have resulted in a different outcome? Look for those videos.
Stay tuned. Thank you for joining. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, we're still live on TikTok. There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, let's do it.
I believe her initially because of the drug allegations, and he changed his personality to a pirate. I now think she's the abuser. Do you think the jury has been changing their minds all throughout this trial?
Honestly, I always want to kind of answer a question with a question. I think that she was abusive verbally and physically. Okay, the question is, can she be a perpetrator and also a victim? I think the answer is yes, but what do you guys think?
I agree.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Cool.
There was a clip that Amber's legal team was ignoring her. Can her legal team still drop her this far into the trial?
Yeah,
They probably should.
No, I don't think any judge will allow an attorney to withdraw. Literally, they're going to close next week on Friday. So I don't think any judge will allow that because you got to start all over. You got to bring jurors, like a whole new panel, or bring this
But
panel
I
back.
think, the jury are just people like you and I, right? All of our perceptions are kind of changing daily. So it's not so far-fetched that they may be changing their opinion from witness to witness from testimony to testimony. So, they're just people, they're stuck in this courtroom and they're listening to this all day. So yeah, absolutely. It's very possible that they change their perception going in versus where they're at now.
Yeah, what I'd say about jurors, and I want to hear the next question is, well, here in California, we got 12. It's 7 in Virginia plus 4 alternates. But it's 12 strangers that can't think of an excuse to get out of jury duty.
Yeah.
Right?
So now they're stuck.
Kind of a double-ended question here. What can be the penalty for Amber if she loses? Can Amber be sent to prison?
You guys want to take this? Or
Well, this is a civil case.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna answer that. There's no prison for civil
Yeah.
case, but
Well,
What
Unless they're
for
talking about perjury.
that would be an Eva question.
Yeah, I think it's, look, I know people love to hate Amber Heard, but like the possibility of her being charged with perjury, it's like almost none. So just gonna get it out of your mind. A prosecuted perjury cases as a prosecutor, they're very, very rare. You're not gonna see a civil defendant who's an alleged victim of domestic violence being charged for perjury. And this is really why. One, we talk about the chilling effect. Two, you know what the criminal justice system used as leverage in civil cases? That's the last thing you want as law enforcement or a prosecutor. These are two civil parties that are going at it. It's about money. You don't want them to leverage law enforcement prosecutors to kind of gain leverage in a civil dispute. So it's not going to happen.
haven't they just proved that it was a toxic drug-fueled relationship on both sides? Both were abusers, no?
Well, if they prove that, then I think Heard wins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. She still
I agree.
wins, but I think that's
She
a
wins the
fact.
case.
Yeah,
She wins the case.
Yeah, she wins the case, but I think that's a fact, though. Not a fact, but I think we can conclude that she was just as
And I think
abusive
that's
to
what
him
Johnny
as he was.
wanted. Johnny wanted for people to know that he was the only one.
Yeah, I mean, there's really 3 possibilities here, right? Let's kind of go through. The first is what Depp said, that he's never struck a woman, right? That's one. Obviously, that proves that he wins. There's Heard's kind of incredible story at best that she's never, ever used violence, all right? Obviously, she wins if she proves that. But there's kind of that middle ground that I think Heard should be there because they're both beating each other up and they're both
Right.
crazy, rich celebrities in LA. Just go to that middle ground because you still win. That third scenario, which is the most likely, I don't understand why she's not going there and she's taking this really kind of extreme.
I
I think that's
think
what the
if she
focus is.
had-
I'm sorry, on the
yeah.
closing. On closing, that's what their focus is going to be.
But I think if they had focused on that beforehand, she would, number one, be much more likable. And I think she would have had a much better shot at winning without the sort of like, we don't know where we stand type of thing. Because people would have just said, hey, she's owning what she's done, but she's also sort of telling the truth. But now when you're flat out denying things where there's videos and footage and it's a really bad look. And that's why I keep asking, like, is her case really that bad, or her attorneys just don't know what they're doing? Because all of these things that are coming in, all this testimony, it's not helping her. Was she coached at all?
Maybe she's
it's
not
just
listening to her attorneys.
She's probably not.
She probably needs some better attorneys like the ones here at West Coast.
After Amber's side is done, are we going to see anybody on Johnny's side being brought?
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a rebuttal to this, and I expect
Excuse me.
Johnny Depp to be called as a witness in Heard's case in chief, because if Heard's lawyers they've done everything wrong. What they should do is call Depp in their case to at least ask the questions first, get out ahead of the narrative. The last thing you want is Johnny Depp, charming, likable, to get out there and start talking again in rebuttal. Oh man, that's going to be a disaster for Heard's fan.
I agree.
Everyone hates Disney. I can't stand Disney. I'm done with Disney forever. Just some comments.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, they cast Margot Robbie as the new lead in the new Pirates movie.
Yeah.
So not only did they drop him, but they cast a woman as the
Did
lead
any of you
pirate.
guys hear Amber say she had a skin condition?
I did not, but I've heard the Botox, filler, all that kind of. There's plastic surgeons' derms on social media saying, "Oh, that's just swelling from some filler."
Did
Under eye
Amber sue her own lawyers for malpractice for being so bad?
Yeah, you can sue anyone for anything.
Someone said, our perceptions are not changing daily. We believe Johnny. She's lying. Her freeloaders are all lying too. About the
freeloaders, I think, are her friends that were testifying today, right?
Yeah.
Because they lived in his penthouse. And so
Red,
I've
red,
seen a
free.
lot of I've seen a lot of freeloading comments on social media.
Amber's sister seems like she'd be fun to hang out with. A big question on our TikTok today was, did you guys see her walk out before the jury was dismissed?
Yeah, I didn't see it, even though I was doing trial commentary yesterday. If so, look, part of her problem is she can't control her emotions, right? You kind of saw that in the deposition testimony. Look, you're in a courtroom, that's your audience. Doesn't matter what Neama, Liana, and Human think, or any of us think on social. Those 7 jurors and the 4 alternates, you better put some respect on them, because you walking out like that, that's a terrible look, and something that, I think is a mistake, if she really did that.
Did you guys notice her demeanor? How she was very theatrical and dramatic when the trial first started, and then when she was being cross-examined by Camille, she just kind of had this sort of stoic, almost angry, when she was talking about things that made her emotional. We didn't see any of, those theatrics where she was crying.
That's why I think Camille brought a little bit of anger out of her.
Yeah.
And that was
Because there was
let's
such
be
a
real.
disparity
I mean,
between.
the last thing you wanted, if you're Depp, is to cross-examine her with a man. There was a strategic legal decision to bring a woman to do the cross-examination,
Wow.
which was a very good one.
How would the judge know the jury isn't looking on the internet?
Look, that's their job, right? I've had cases that are mistrial because some jurors Googling things. So, look, if it comes out, we're going to do this whole thing over again unless there's an alternate available. So it's like one of the cardinal sins of jury duty.
I saw a TikTok this morning, and it was somebody who was just in the courtroom as a, just a public viewer, and they were describing what the jury's response was. Is that allowed to be on the internet?
Yeah, it's allowed. So like when we do court TV, for instance, I do that all the time. They have like Chanley Painters, the reporter who's covering it. She's always in the front row. She's usually wearing like a bright colored. So she can describe it verbally, but you can't record the jurors. That's one of the restrictions when it comes to video.
There's actually a lot of people on TikTok who talk about, well, during this part of the testimony, this was the reaction and whatnot. So there's actually a lot of people who have been posting. I think that's very interesting because that's the only glimpse we get into what the jury is thinking, feeling, reacting.
Yeah, you want to get a sense of they're nodding, they're leaning, they're listening, they're taking notes. They're dozing off,
How long in advance were people lining up to be able to get in?
I've heard earlier than midnight the night before. Wow. And that was like during some of the random witnesses' testimony. I think for Depp and Heard, it was probably like, and I heard people are paying like $10,000 for someone in line. It's crazy.
If the
$10,000 to $30,000. Like,
if the aftermath of this trial results in Amber's career being over, can she sue for defamation?
well, defamation generally has a 1-year statute in most states, so the window to sue, unless there's a new statement, it's closed.
And here's the thing, she did countersue in this case.
Yeah.
So the question is, can she do it again? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, I think if she were to win this case, her career wouldn't necessarily be over, right? I mean, public perception, I don't think who is she going to sue for that? But in terms of like her career and her roles, I don't see how it would be over if she ends up being victorious. You agree?
Yeah, if she wins, she's going to be good. And she still always has James Franco or Elon Musk to
Yeah.
Do you guys think Amber's witnesses are credible?
And go ahead.
The two that came in, I think one of them, I forget her name, maybe it's Raquel.
Rocky.
That I didn't find all of them to be credible. One of them was seemed to be very kind of neutral the way he was talking.
Right yesterday,
Yesterday.
Yeah.
I thought he was.
Yeah,
I thought he was the best compared to the two today.
I didn't think her friend Raquel or former bestie or whatever was very credible. Because a lot of the time she would say, I don't remember, and then proceed to kind of make a very definitive statement. And so, I don't know, I something about her I didn't really vibe with.
Can Johnny be friendly with the writer, transcriber, and wave to the jury and smile directly at them?
Yeah, you're not supposed to communicate directly with them. That's,
But you can smile.
you can smile. Yeah.
I think he waved to his fans, but he didn't wave to the jury.
Yeah.
I think people are just liking him just sitting there, right? Because his little like reactions and his little like, comments to his attorney, people are just getting such a kick out of it. TikTok has been full of like little snippets of
There's
Depp.
clips of Johnny Depp and Camille right after cross-exam on TikTok all over now.
Hugging.
And we're hugging each other.
He's one of the
He's
best
like,
actors of our generation, and like
Yeah.
it can be like Disney movies, it can be like old 21 Jump Street, it can be Donnie Brasco. I mean, like Fear and Love. I mean, the guy's like
Blow.
Yeah, Blow. I mean, his acting career is on a whole nother level. So
The vibe of her ex-friends will stick with the jury, right? More than their testimony.
possibly, you never know what juror's going to pick up on. In
The
terms-
vibe, yeah. Well, also that they're her ex. I mean, look, I think for me, it's a bad look, if I can say that, that she just has so few people coming forward and trying to support her, at least being present. Like her sister is the only one that is actually present in the courtroom or was present this morning. Obviously, so was the doctor. But, you know, in terms of like her moral support, you know, everyone's pre-recorded. And I think the jury's going to pick up on that.
So I have a hard time believing that all of Amber's claims are lies. There has to be some truth to what she's saying. And Nora said Amber is actually quite smart. She memorized the number of pages that her lawyer coached her on. She learns fast.
Yeah, I mean, those are two good points. And the question is, like, why do you take this extreme position? I've never used drugs. I've never hit Johnny, you know, when you can just say, listen, like, I am partially responsible for this, you know, like, I put myself in a toxic relationship. And again, you never want to blame the victim. So like, I got to like put that disclaimer out there, but it's clear that she was verbally would say a lot of bad things to Johnny. Just come out and say it. Say, listen, like we would get drunk. We would use drugs. We would be really horrible to one another. There were times where, you know, I raised my voice, I used my hands, whatever you want to say. And he struck back. And that's all you got to say.
Can Amber and her friends be investigated for illegal substances as hard as they're, you know, digging to Johnny?
That's a great question because you're talking to people that are admitting to a lot of drug use. Will they actually be prosecuted? It goes back to kind of the perjury thing. Not going to happen. So generally, you need something more than an admission for prosecution.
Especially if it's a felony, right?
We're supposed to believe that she took the time to photograph the scenes, but not the actual injuries. I think that's suspicious.
That's
I
what-
want to talk about that. Okay, so she photographed the bruising. A question people have, like, why isn't she photographed the sexual abuse? I think it's very reasonable for someone not to take a picture of their vagina when they've been subject to a cavity search or being sexually assaulted with a bottle. So I think that's kind of a strange kind of question. And unless you're going to get Johnny's DNA or DNA on the bottle, you're not going to really have any kind of forensic evidence.
Well, I think the question is also hinting at the fact, and a lot of people have said this. There's a lot of the photographs are either the day after or like they're not sort of immediate, right? And it's not what you would expect, I think, for someone to photograph. Like, why are you waiting an entire day or 2 days to take a picture of your bruising and say, well, it was worse on the first day, but you know, here it is 2 days later. So I think that's what this commenter is getting at.
But also, like to add to what Neama said, I mean, I don't think it would be unreasonable if someone has to go under, you know, that type of experience. They're probably not thinking about, let me just film this real quick.
Because if you were, you would have called law enforcement, right? And she didn't report this to law enforcement, so clearly she didn't want him to be prosecuted. And again, that's what I would argue in closing. Listen, I don't want this guy arrested. I don't want to be here. I didn't want anything to do with him. I'll find another way.
I think she did a good job of talking about that a lot, saying, I still love him. I love him. I love the good Johnny.
Yeah.
Because she tried to focus on that a lot. What do you guys think about the whole thing about Johnny not looking at her in the eyes or letting
Yeah, I thought that was
I didn't know that either.
stupid, you know? Like,
Yeah.
maybe like people on social media care about it, but like looking at someone in the eye.
I thought Camille
like,
focusing on it was
Yeah.
smart either.
Yeah, it just
Because that was one of her first
yeah,
questions.
it didn't make any sense. In my
It didn't move the story along.
opinion.
No.
There's like 150 people on here still. Someone saying she has no medical record. A carpenter on TikTok said that the broken bedside is consistent with a knife, not from a kick. Another question here. What about TMZ owning the copyright? Doesn't that prove she sold it?
Well, you can always, there's usually a digital trail, right? Unless you're giving something to someone in a manila envelope, there's an email, there's a text message, there's something, but TMZ is not going to, reveal their sources. Question though, does it really matter? Like if you're talking about a leak, right? Someone leaked it. There's PR teams. This is their job, whether Amber did it, her assistant, publicist, like obviously everyone wants to have their fans think that they're the victim and not the perpetrator. So that's kind of much ado about nothing in my opinion.
Do you think she pulled her own hair out?
Possibly, I mean.
I don't think it's
know.
100% impossible.
Yeah, and then I didn't see much hair loss. Maybe I'm sensitive to it as a guy, but I didn't see like a big chunk. So.
All right, let's wrap it up. Last question: is this Team Amber or Team Depp? That's what they're asking.
That's a good question.
Okay, politically correct. You go first.
I'm still undecided. No, when we had this conversation with Neama, we had an IG live on this. I was 100% team Amber, and I'm like throughout this whole thing, I'm kind of like in the middle now.
I'm not. In the
And
middle.
I'm
gonna come out and
I'm
admit.
leaning towards Johnny Depp now, more towards Johnny Depp. I want to see how it ends up.
Yeah, I think sitting here today, I'm team Johnny Depp.
Okay. I want to answer it in a lawyer way. I'm Team Depp in the court of public opinion, but Team Amber in the courtroom because I think she wins just purely on the jury instructions, right? But as far as, who's more likable, who's more credible, it's Johnny Depp.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
I agree.
Thank you. I think this one's still going.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, that was fun.
Cool.
And stream.
Always kind of just like
Yeah, it's been a long time since we did